Boundaries are often misunderstood as something rigid, something firm, something that must be held tightly in order to prevent intrusion, something that must be defended in order to remain intact. Because boundaries are often discussed in the context of protection, they can begin to feel like walls rather than clarity. Walls require maintenance. Walls require monitoring. Walls require reinforcement. Walls require vigilance. And when boundaries are experienced as something that must constantly be defended, tension begins to form. Because the internal system begins to anticipate challenge, anticipate disagreement, anticipate pressure, anticipate misunderstanding, anticipate the need to justify or explain, anticipate the possibility of being pushed beyond what feels workable. This anticipation creates defensiveness even before interaction begins. Defensiveness narrows attention. Narrowed attention reduces flexibility. Reduced flexibility can make communication feel more difficult, even when the boundary itself is reasonable, even when the situation does not require conflict, even when cooperation is possible. Defensiveness is not required for clarity. Clarity can exist without tension. Clarity can exist without confrontation. Clarity can exist without emotional armor. Boundaries become simpler when they are recognized as information rather than resistance. Information about what is workable. Information about what is sustainable. Information about what allows participation to remain consistent. Information about what allows energy to remain available. Information about what allows care to continue without becoming depleted. Boundaries are part of responsiveness. Responsiveness requires awareness of capacity. Capacity is not fixed. Capacity changes. Energy changes. Circumstances change. Needs change. Responsibilities change. Priorities change. Boundaries allow adjustment as conditions evolve. Boundaries communicate what allows participation to remain healthy. Healthy participation supports continuity. Continuity supports trust. Trust supports cooperation. Cooperation reduces the need for force. Force often creates resistance. Resistance creates friction. Friction reduces effectiveness. Effectiveness improves when clarity is communicated early. Clear boundaries reduce confusion. Reduced confusion improves coordination. Coordination supports shared progress. Progress strengthens relationships. Relationships function more smoothly when expectations are visible. Visible expectations reduce misinterpretation. Misinterpretation often leads to unnecessary conflict. Conflict consumes energy. Energy becomes less available for meaningful participation. Boundaries are not barriers to connection. Boundaries support connection, because connection requires sustainability. Unsustainable participation eventually leads to withdrawal. Withdrawal reduces connection. Reduced connection limits collaboration. Boundaries allow connection to remain stable over time. Boundaries communicate what allows interaction to remain workable. Workable interaction allows cooperation to continue. Boundaries do not need to be explained extensively in order to be valid. Over-explanation often appears when approval is being sought. Approval is not required for boundaries to function. Understanding can be helpful, but agreement is not always necessary. Clarity is often sufficient. Clear communication reduces ambiguity. Reduced ambiguity improves coordination. Coordination allows relationships to function more smoothly. Defensiveness often appears when boundaries are interpreted as personal rejection. But boundaries are usually practical information. Information about timing. Information about availability. Information about energy. Information about focus. Information about responsibility. Information about what can be sustained. Information about what can be done well. When boundaries are communicated as practical information, emotional intensity often decreases, because the communication is not positioned as opposition. It is positioned as clarity. Clarity allows adjustment. Adjustment allows cooperation. Cooperation supports shared outcomes. Shared outcomes benefit everyone involved. Defensiveness often appears when identity becomes involved, when boundaries feel like statements about worth, when limits feel like statements about loyalty, when capacity feels like statements about commitment. But capacity fluctuates, energy fluctuates, focus fluctuates. Life contains many moving elements. Boundaries allow navigation within these changing conditions. Navigation requires awareness. Awareness includes recognizing limits. Limits are not failures. Limits provide useful information. Information supports intelligent decision-making. Intelligent decision-making improves sustainability. Sustainability allows participation to continue. Participation allows contribution to continue. Contribution strengthens connection. Connection strengthens shared stability. Boundaries without defensiveness allow communication to remain open. Open communication allows adjustment before tension escalates. Early adjustment prevents unnecessary conflict. Prevented conflict preserves energy. Preserved energy remains available for meaningful engagement. Defensiveness often escalates situations unnecessarily. Escalation increases intensity. Increased intensity reduces listening. Reduced listening reduces understanding. Reduced understanding increases misinterpretation. Misinterpretation increases friction. Friction reduces effectiveness. Clear boundaries communicated calmly often reduce escalation. Calm communication supports clarity. Clarity supports understanding. Understanding supports cooperation. Cooperation supports shared movement forward. Boundaries do not need to be sharp in order to be clear. Firm does not require harsh. Clear does not require aggressive. Direct does not require forceful. Simple communication often functions effectively. Availability can be communicated simply. Limits can be communicated simply. Needs can be communicated simply. Preferences can be communicated simply. Simplicity reduces misunderstanding. Reduced misunderstanding improves efficiency. Efficiency reduces strain. Reduced strain improves sustainability. Sustainable interaction supports long-term collaboration. Long-term collaboration supports meaningful outcomes. Boundaries often become easier to communicate when they are not treated as personal defense. Defense implies threat. When threat is assumed, communication becomes tense. Tension influences tone. Tone influences interpretation. Interpretation influences reaction. Reaction influences interaction. Interaction influences relationship quality. Boundaries communicated without defensiveness often create stability. Stability allows trust to develop. Trust reduces the need for repeated justification. Repeated justification consumes energy. Energy becomes more available when communication becomes more direct. Direct communication reduces confusion. Reduced confusion improves alignment. Alignment improves cooperation. Cooperation improves results. Results reinforce trust in communication. Trust reduces future defensiveness. The cycle becomes self-supporting. Boundaries allow clarity about where attention can be placed effectively. Attention placed effectively improves quality of participation. Quality participation strengthens contribution. Contribution strengthens shared progress. Shared progress strengthens connection. Connection supports continued collaboration. Boundaries protect the ability to remain engaged. Not because engagement must be forced, but because engagement is supported by sustainability. Sustainability requires awareness of limits. Awareness of limits allows intelligent pacing. Pacing allows energy to remain available. Available energy supports meaningful participation. Meaningful participation supports continued development. Development strengthens capability. Capability increases capacity gradually. Capacity expands through use. Boundaries do not prevent growth. Boundaries support growth by preventing overload. Overload reduces effectiveness. Reduced effectiveness creates frustration. Frustration reduces engagement. Reduced engagement limits development. Boundaries allow development to continue without interruption from exhaustion. Defensiveness often assumes that boundaries will create disconnection, but unclear expectations often create more disconnection than clear limits. Clarity allows cooperation to adjust naturally. Natural adjustment reduces unnecessary tension. Reduced tension improves communication quality. Improved communication quality strengthens relationships. Strong relationships allow more flexibility. Flexibility allows adaptation to changing needs. Changing needs are part of life. Boundaries allow responsiveness to change. Responsiveness improves resilience. Resilience supports stability. Stability supports continued participation. Participation supports shared growth. Shared growth strengthens trust. Trust allows boundaries to be respected without conflict. Conflict becomes less necessary when communication becomes clearer. Clarity reduces assumption. Reduced assumption reduces misunderstanding. Reduced misunderstanding reduces unnecessary friction. Boundaries without defensiveness allow relationships to function more smoothly. Smooth functioning allows attention to remain on meaningful collaboration. Collaboration allows shared intelligence to develop. Shared intelligence improves decision-making. Improved decision-making improves outcomes. Outcomes reinforce trust in cooperation. Trust strengthens connection. Connection supports continued participation. Boundaries are part of this ongoing participation. They do not interrupt connection. They support connection by allowing sustainability. Sustainability allows presence to remain available. Presence allows responsiveness. Responsiveness supports meaningful interaction. Interaction supports shared progress. Shared progress strengthens stability. Stability allows continued development. Development expands possibility. Possibility continues revealing itself through participation. Boundaries without defensiveness allow participation to remain steady. Steady participation supports growth. Growth supports adaptability. Adaptability supports resilience. Resilience supports continued engagement with life as it unfolds. Boundaries remain part of this process. Quietly supporting sustainability. Quietly supporting clarity. Quietly supporting continued participation. Nothing extra is required for boundaries to function intelligently. Clarity is enough, and clarity is already available. Participation continues.